Hey, Push Run Nation, Dr. Dave here. Peace. Today, we're going to be talking about a new shoe that I wore fresh out of the box in a 5K race last Friday night and took almost 2 minutes off my previous week's 5K time. And the second race wearing this shoe was on a very hilly course compared to moderate hills the previous week. So, stay tuned and we'll go over all the details. All right, let's jump into it. We're going to be checking out the new Adidas Prime X Strung 2. Fresh out of the box last Friday, as I just said, I wore this in a 5K race. The first mile and a half of the race was downhill to flats, and down the bottom of that hill, you turned around, you went right back up. So going up, I would then have some flats to uphill section, and at the end was probably the last half mile was all uphill. So even though with a greater amount of feet in the ascent, I still took 1 minute and 54 seconds off my previous 5K time 1 week prior on the previous Saturday. And that was wearing the New Balance Super Comp Elite V3s. So even though this is a much heavier shoe, and we'll weigh this up in a minute, because of all the technology here in that midsole, this let me take off almost 2 minutes on my race times. So let's check this shoe out. On the ankle, some very nice padding around there. There's 3 sections. It's not one piece of padding that goes all the way around. On these 2 sections right here, on the heel, there is no padding. So there is on the inside, outside, and right on the heel. And it does stick out a little bit, so it locks your ankle very nicely into position. Still has that pull tab on the back of the heel that came out on the first edition of the Prime X Strung. And some people don't know what that's for. Well, that's for either helping to pull the shoe on because of the booty constructed upper, or if you find that you're getting rubbing on the back of your Achilles section above your heel, you can actually flip that in and wear it as a little bit extra padding on the back of your heel or above your heel on that Achilles section. Okay, so let's move down. As I just said, the upper is a one-piece booty constructed upper, and by that, what the booty section or booty construction means is that there is no independent tongue. It's all sewn together here. Now that tongue is thin and very stretchy, so one of the things you have to play with in your lacing is that you're not tying your laces down too tight so that you cause pressure points on that section of your upper foot. Okay? So you do want to play with that a little bit. I wore these in my race last Friday, fresh out of the box. I wore them 2 miles in a warm-up and then the race, and then cool down. Since that race, I've worn these for 30 miles during the week, during training runs. So I have a pretty good feel for how this shoe operates under different conditions and different courses. The laces on here are not stretchy. They're very thin. So what I have found with the thinner the laces are, the more pressure they will put on the top of your foot here. So again, you want to make sure that you do use a little bit of time before going out in your training runs to get that lacing down properly so it's not too tight, or you'll be stopping during your training runs or races for that matter if you wear this during a race to adjust that lace. So if you want to get around not having to adjust that, just play with it a little bit and warm up to get your cinching down properly. That upper is the same type of strung 3D printed upper that was in the original Prime X. This one is a little bit looser constructed with the filaments in it, meaning they're not as tight together. This is by 3D printed upper. What I mean by that is what Adidas did is went to their elite runners, did 3D imaging of their feet to learn where they needed the exact kind of tension or support on their foot during movement, and then that's how their upper was printed out and first constructed. And this is a very form-fitting upper. I have narrow feet with a pretty good mid to high level reaching arch, and this shoe fits me perfectly for that. If you have a wide foot, this shoe may not be too good for you because your foot, mostly out here, might be overlapping a little bit. So you want to check into that before trying these on, if that shoe's going to work out for you or not. Now, the midsole, we have 3 layers of Light Strike Pro Foam, and one of the new design features on this, the V2, is that there's 2 layers of carbon plate going almost the full length of the shoe. And mostly on the forefoot, one of the big design features is that in between those 2 carbon plates up front here, in the middle here is a special foam puck. And Adidas is calling that the energy core foam. So it's almost like that foam is sandwiched between 2 carbon plates. Now, because there are 2 carbon plates, these shoes cannot be worn by professional runners who are going for top overall marathon or race finishings, or will be competing for prize money. Also, these can't be worn by pros in international triathlons for the same reason road running pros cannot wear this anymore. But as a professional amateur, making my living from running online, selling running products through YouTube and coaching, I don't run for prize money. So I can wear these into races. I most certainly wanted to try these out under race conditions, at least in a 5K. I will be trying these out in other distances, at least a half marathon, to see how they work in that. Now, as we go to the outsole, we have very grippy Continental rubber on the outsole, same as the Prime X Strung originals, has the same type of rubber on the bottom. It's very thin, but this Continental rubber is very strong, so you'll get a lot of mileage out of this foam here. There is that deviation hole right in the middle. Does not have as much visibility of the carbon plate as the originals do, but you most certainly can see it. And there's a little hole in that bottom carbon plate so you can see right through to the second carbon plate. Now, anyone that knows the history of carbon plates in running shoes know that the original Alphafly shoe from Nike that Eliud Kipchoge wore, and the first time he tried to go under 2 hours in the marathon, that shoe that he was wearing had 2 layers of carbon plate. After that, World Athletics came out with their ruling that shoes could only have 1 layer of carbon plating for pro runners. But again, amateur runners have at it. So let's check a few other stats here. Check the weight out. This is a men's US size 11, and that is 11.9 ounces. Compared to the original Prime X Strung, size 11, is exactly 10 ounces. So V2 is almost 2 whole ounces heavier. So the V2 is 1.9 ounces heavier than the originals. Now let's check that in grams for our European subscribers. On the V2s, we have 334 grams, and on the originals, we have 283 grams. Let's just check one more thing, the density of the foams, because that has changed a little bit with the V2. In the forefoot of the V2s, I have 33.5 on the durometer, and on the originals, I have 31.5. So just a tad firmer on the forefoot in the V2s. Now let's check the heel, and I measure straight down from the ankle bone I have 26. And on the originals, I have 31.5. So with those measurements, a lot more foam in here and a little bit softer. But with the extra plate going almost the entire length of that shoe, that adds a little bit more weight. Now, one of my big pet peeves with the originals was that narrow heel. And a lot of people who wore this shoe said the same thing, because that takes away from a lot of stability when wearing this shoe. In the first video I did, wearing this shoe showed me with a pretty good ankle turn. If you were running on a hill, coming down on your heel, that heel section would collapse and result in a lot of ankle twisting. Adidas must have got my memo and taken my remarks into consideration when designing the V2, because the heel section is a little bit wider to give you more stability and more support when running. So that's one of the better features with the new shoe. Now, in the heel, that has the same 50 millimeter stack, and in the forefoot, we have 43.5 millimeters for a 6.5 millimeter drop. That's about the same as the originals. Now, depending on your size, will dictate how much the stack height actually is. Those measurements I just gave, which were for a men's US size 9, will not be the same if you have an 11 or a 12. These may very actually be 52 millimeters, but we know they're at least 50 millimeters from a men's US size 9. So there you have it, all the ins and outs of the Adidas Prime X Strung V2s. Pretty well redesigned from the originals, 1.9 ounces heavier than the originals, and a little wider heel. 2 carbon plates in there for a very snappy and responsive return when out running. Now again, how did this work for me? I took almost 2 whole minutes off my 5K time 1 week to the next, from one Saturday to the following Friday. In the second race, on the Friday, wearing this shoe was on a hilly course. If you want to try this out, I'll put a link down in the description over to Roadrunner Sports. And think about getting the VIP membership over there. I have the Platinum membership, which will get you 10% off on any products you buy from them right off the initial price, and 15% cash back, which will build up in your account that you can then apply to your next purchase, whatever you're buying, whether it's gear, nutritional supplements, or shoes. So this is Dr. Dave for Push the Run Nation. I'll see you out in the streets, the roads, and the trails. Peace.